copywriting agency commissioned a CG video from me. I was paid $300 for this short animation. Not the biggest money, but for the amount of work I'm about to show you, it's a quite pleasant sum for me. The class requirements are as follows: create animation of a typewriter typing the following text, 26 Copywriting Studio, this is the agency's name, and waving magic from the alphabet, this is their slogan. The concept seemed interesting to me, especially the opportunity to depict a typewriter, as this mechanism has always aesthetically appealed to me. The client also provided references and storyboard wishes, so let's get to work. The first step was to save several references in the PureRef program. For this specific animation, not many references were required. Next, in the text editor, I created a new A4 sized file. I choose a very high pixel count because this image will be used for macro shots in a project. I wrote the necessary text and then counted the number of future frame iterations, including those where nothing visually changes, such as spaces and line breaks. It turned out that the final frame was the 54th. I saved all the frames in a separate folder and began working within Blender. Initially, I tried to create a 3D model of a typewriter manually, but then I realized it would be more efficient to use a stock model. Considering I was being paid for this work, I considered purchasing a 3D model, as paid options are usually of higher quality, which is good for cinematics. However, in this particular case, I found a suitable model among free options. I created a model of a sheet of paper, added texture to it, and also worked on a texture of a typewriter's metal. I renamed the keys for convenience and added letter texture to the keys. For this, I duplicated the metal material. I added an image of a keyboard layout using the classic QWERTY layout. By the way, the QWERTY keyboard layout we use today was developed to reduce key jams on early typewriters. I combined the letter texture and material using a mixer node. For the key textures, I added a second UV map for the material. Then, switching to top view, I started unwrapping each key texture and slightly adjusting the UV layout. I began adding keyframes for the hammer strikes and paper movement. This is straightforward. Each keyframe changes either the position or rotation of the object. This involves a lot of manual work, which some might find tedious, but I found it quite calming. Next came working with the camera. Knowing the client's requirements, I created the necessary camera movements using keyframes. For the shot at the end of the video, where the hammer prints a dot, I created a second camera and set a marker to transition between the two cameras on the timeline. The next step was to create the letter printing animation, probably the most exciting part, but before that I rendered the animation in its current state to ensure everything was in order. The method I devised for simulating the typing effect involves overlaying the animation on the paper plane, but to correctly place the frames into video editor, I needed to know the keyframe numbers within Blender. When importing the video back into Blender, the frames must align correctly. In Google Sheets I created a list of all the frames, assigning each a frame number from Blender's timeline. I applied conditional formatting to see where the intervals between keyframes were too small and adjusted the spacing to be more even. I created the video sequence in CapCut, as it's free. The smallest frame rate I could set in CapCut was 24 FPS, so I calculated the timings by dividing the frame number by 24. Since CapCut using decimals from 1 to 23, I separately recorded the decimal places from the timings column and divided them by 4. This might seem unintuitive at first, but watching the video further will quickly clarify why I did this. Having finished the table, I created a file in the CapCut. I added all 54 images to it. Listen carefully here. I placed each image on a timeline, positioning its end at the start time of the next image. For example, when adjusting the right edge of image number 2, I referred to the row in the table next to image 3. After finishing, I exported the video. Returning to Blender, I went to the shader editor. I found the paper material and replaced the texture image with the texture video sequence. I made sure to add a number of frames. Then I did a bit of magic with the keyframe animation to make it look smoother and more cohesive. I added keyframe animation to the keys, setting each key's origin and the point where it would pivot in real time, and added keyframe rotations. A few more minutes of work with the keyframes. I checked that everything worked correctly. I rendered using the Eve engine with render sample set to 2, just to make sure the animation was fine. If you render using the Cycles engine and discover issues after many hours of computer work, it would be disappointing. You could do a test render in cycles with 2 samples, but I skipped that. I set the frame resolution to 1920 by 1920 pixels and the format to PNG. After rendering the frames, I combined them and added a sound effect of key clicks.